Okay, so in recent days, there's been a lot of talk about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and how Canadians across the country are fed up and showing up in numbers that are simply impressive. And one of the main reasons they're out there is to have their grievance not only acknowledged, but reaffirmed by the courts. And this grievance is the constant overriding of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In Section 1, it says the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. So essentially, that's fancy talk for saying we do have rights, but the government can override them if they meet these criteria. Now, I've already made videos on this topic, and you can check out those videos on my channel. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe while you're there. But what I want to cover in this video today is a common argument I've been hearing about Section 1 and wanted to highlight some of the problems of repeating this argument. And the argument is basically this: Section 1 can be interpreted however we want. So, for example, in the section where it says the government must set reasonable limits, the argument is, well, who decides what is reasonable? What's reasonable for me may be different from what's reasonable for you, right? Well, if you throw common sense and responsible interpretation out the window, then yes. Let's be clear, according to the Government of Canada's website, there is only one principle or approach, namely the words of an act are to be read in their entire context and in their grammatical and ordinary sense harmoniously with the scheme of the act, the object of the act, and the intention of Parliament. I hate that I have to do this, but let's define the word reasonable. One meaning is being in accordance with reason. So what does reason mean? Reason means the power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. Okay, so let's apply these definitions to our situation here in Canada. Mandates and lockdowns have been constantly changing and evolving as time goes on. There are no limits set, we're back and forth with lockdowns, mandates, then we close down when we see hospitalizations rise, and we go through it all again with little warning. Our economy and Canadians' lives were destroyed as a result of this strategy. In fact, it can be argued that the damage done by lockdowns are worse than the damage the virus has done. So the question is this: was this an example of reasonable limits? Any reasonable person would answer no to that question. It would be different if we had done things correctly, like had parliamentary committees that discussed the benefits versus the costs, and looked at the entire picture and came up with a contingency plan to maximize our victory over the pandemic while minimizing collateral damage, but none of that was done. There was nothing reasonable about it. And that covers the part of Section 1 that says reasonable limits must be prescribed by law. There were also no new laws created. The 14 parliaments across Canada were closed for the most part for the last 2 years, so that also shows us this wasn't conducted within a free and democratic society. But the big punch here is with this phrase that Section 1 lists, saying these actions must be demonstrably justified. Now, the word justify alone means show or prove to be right or reasonable, and we already know what reasonable means. But not only that, they added the word demonstrably to that phrase. Now, I wonder why they did that. Could it be that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms are so important to Canadians that they were ensuring no government overreach was possible? Seems like it to me. Now, what does the word demonstrably mean? It means in a way that is clearly apparent or capable of being logically proved. Now, you tell me, dear video watcher, is a virus with a 99.98% survival rate a demonstrably justified reason to go forward with overriding Canadians' rights and freedoms? I'll let you think on that one for a second. Looking back at the government's rules for properly interpreting laws, we covered the context, the grammar, and the object of the act, but now we have this phrase, the intention of Parliament. If only there were at least one person alive today that was around, in Parliament, and present for the discussions and debates that surrounded the wording in this charter. The last surviving architect of the charter, Brian Peckford, says Section 1 was inserted for in case of an emergency, so that a government could act swiftly if the state was in peril, like a war or insurrection. So let me ask it this way: is a virus with a less than 1% fatality rate in any way comparable to a war or insurrection? Nope, I didn't think so. That's my point for today, guys. Please share this video. Understanding the simple truths is so important in our country, and that is the point of these videos and my channel. So share this around, subscribe for more videos, and remember to always stay Canadian.